Hi, I'm Jim McCarthy from BeginDrumming.com. Now, one of the things that's really common with beginner drummers is that they get a new drum kit and they're not quite sure how to set it up. Or even if you've been playing drums for a while, there might be a few things that you haven't come across yet that can really help you with your drum setup to A, get around the drums a little bit better, and B, maybe avoid some of those problems in performance situations. So, without further ado, let's go into how to set up the drum kit. Okay, so we're going to start right here in the corner of this room, which is where we're going to set up the drum kit. And it's a fairly common place to set up a drum kit, fair enough, it's tucked out of the way. What we're going to do is we're going to set it up facing the back wall. We're going to imagine that the back wall there is actually the audience, as if we're on stage. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to grab the bass drum, start with the bass drum first, and the mistake that most people make is that they get the bass drum and pretty much face it into the wall or directly out to the audience. Now that's okay in the practice room, of course, because it doesn't really matter exactly which way you're facing, it's whatever fits nicely in your room. But really, if that's the audience back there, what you want to do is face the bass drum actually a little bit to the right, like so. So that's straight on, we're going to face it a little bit to the right, even about 45 degrees. That's because when you're sitting at the drum kit, your body faces a little bit to the left of the bass drum. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get it so that when the drummer is sitting down naturally at the drum kit, he's facing the audience. So I'll just adjust the camera here for a minute and you'll see the bass drum at this kind of almost 45-degree angle. So there you have it, there's the bass drum at a 45-degree angle. Okay, so the next thing we're going to have a look at is the spikes on the side of the bass drum. Okay, let's get in close. Okay, so we're looking here at the spike on the bass drum, and I'm just going to lift it up so you can see in nice and close. Usually what you'll see on the end of the bass drum is this adjustable spike, and you'll see that there's this little screw on the end. Now because we're on carpet, we're just going to leave the pointy spike going into the carpet. If we were on a hardwood floor or a vinyl floor or a concrete floor, we'd have a rubber tip which screws onto the top there, and then you'd get this screw and screw that down hard against the rubber tip so that steel spike wasn't going into the steel floor and into the wooden floor and ruining it, and you'd find that the rubber would actually grip better as well. With just the metal spike, we're going to screw this screw all the way up to the top. If we don't do that, we'll gradually find that it starts to rattle around and make noise. Okay, so let's have a look now at the angle of the spike. This is the direction facing out towards the audience. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to have that not straight, not facing this way, but the spike facing slightly outwards towards the audience. That's so that when I'm playing the bass drum and my foot's going to be playing in from this side here, okay, and the bass drum wants to kind of move away every time I hit it. I'm hitting it and it's sliding away. You can see that there. That's what the pedal's going to be doing. So if I angle it just one or two steps further away from the sitting position of the drummer out towards the audience, that spike will dig in and provide a little bit more resistance to the bass drum sliding that way. Okay, and you'll notice that I've adjusted the spike here so that it pretty much spikes into the carpet quite nicely at about the same time that the bottom edge of the drum actually sits on the ground. So all three bits, the spike on this side, the spike on the other side, and the edge of the bass drum will just sit along the ground, and those spikes are digging in nicely. Okay, so you're going to adjust that here so that the height of the spike is okay. You might actually even adjust that a little bit higher so the back of the drum comes slightly off the ground. Some people prefer that, but in the end of the day it doesn't really matter. Okay, so that's the spikes on the bass drum. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to put the tom arms, the arms that are going to hold the tom-toms here on top of the bass drum, inside here. Some tom arms, it doesn't really matter how you do it, but depending on the design of yours, it may do. Have a look at this. These ones here are kind of old-fashioned pearls, and you'll see that, that they've got an adjustment knob on that side, and if you've got the correct pair for these, you'll find that they're actually on different sides. So if I hold them out matching like that, one will be going that way and one will be going that way. So which way around you put which one on the bass drum actually matters. if I was to do this, okay, putting my toms like that, what you'll see now is that these two adjustment screws are facing right in towards each other. Because I don't want them like so, I want them facing a little bit more towards the player, that's where you're looking from right now, then these two things are going to be right next to each other, and it's going to be very hard to adjust them. So what we want to do is take them out, swap them over, and now when I put them in, and I'm just going to put them in, these ones are fairly short, so I'm not going to put them in very far, I'm going to leave them as high as I possibly can, adjust them here, screw them up, and here we have it. The screws on the back now, so I can adjust them quite easily without the toms getting in the way, without them touching in the middle here. Okay, so that's a pretty important aspect of that. You'll also notice the angle of the tom arms is about 90 degrees. Okay, what we don't really want to do is we don't really want to have the angle so that it's kind of facing up like that and the tom arm right down the bottom like that. That's not really any good. You want it probably fairly high. Once again, these are pretty short tom arms, so I want them pretty much as high as possible. And the angle of them should be such that if anything's slightly facing downwards past 90 degrees or about 90 degrees, that's going to give you a good angle at the of the tom at the top. If we have it like this, okay, and too low, that means the tom is kind of going to face that way, and these two toms are going to face in towards each other, and that's not really good. So we want the tom-toms to be relatively flat, so we have this kind of 90 degree angle. Okay, so let's put the toms on. Which one are we going to start with? Well, we're going to start with the biggest one, okay? We want the toms to be pretty low down to the drum without really touching and sitting on top of the bass drum. So the lower we get them, the better. That means, though, we need to start with a bigger one, because the bigger one can't actually get as low, because it's deeper. So let's start with the biggest one. Okay, so here's the deep tom-tom, and I'm just going to slide it on like so. Now there's really no point having it out here at the end of the tom arm. You really want it to be as far in as you can, okay? So it's right in as tightly as it can, not sort of out here, but right in like so against there. And you'll notice that the bottom of the drum now is actually pretty close. Once again, these tom arms are fairly short. Okay, and I'm going to adjust this later, but as long as I've got clearance here, that's all right. I'll just put that around like this so I can get a better look at it, and you can get a look from the side. Okay, so that's kind of flat. What I want is this bottom corner here, and once again I'm in the position of the drummer. I want the bottom corner to kind of sit down, almost touching but not quite the bass drum there. Once I've done that, I've angled that drum slightly in towards me, and you'll notice that the drum, because I've got a 90 degree bend, it isn't facing inwards towards the other tom-tom. It's basically facing almost straight out, okay? Let's show you that from the front on perspective there, okay? So it's not facing inwards like it would be, and I'll just show you, if I had the tom arm like that, it would tend to, the two tom-toms would tend to face in towards each other like that. Instead, it's just past 90 degrees, or at about 90 degrees. So the two toms are going to have pretty much the same angle of attack. Let's get the other tom-tom in here. Okay, so once we've got the big tom on, we can get the smaller one on, roughly the same angle, maybe about a bit flatter, and then once I've got that one on, I can actually adjust the height of it so that it's about at the same height as the bigger one. Remember, the bigger one can't go quite as low. So that's about the same height, and eventually I'll kind of adjust them so they're both flat. I'll get a bit more precise with that once I've got some of the other drums in place. But basically they're about as low as they can go now, and essentially at the right angle, so that's the most important thing. Alrighty, now I'm going to get the angle of this drum back to the 45 degrees. There it is. The next important step